Before we begin, I urge you to watch this video all the way to the end. Every clue matters, and the last revelation changes everything you think you've heard. Stay with me. Chapter 1, The Breach That Fed Us. They told us the Helios Array would save Earth. They told us our station, the Aurora Spindle, would stitch daylight into the dark, drinking cosmic wind and spitting out clean, endless power. I signed up because I thought my hands were steady enough to pin an age to the map. My name is Elias North, Systems Specialist. I believed in elegant equations, in conservation of energy, in outcomes corresponding neatly to inputs. Every doctrine I leaned on snapped the moment we fired the array at full power. Below us, the planet was a bruised marble of ration riots and blackouts. Above, the array's gold ribs were a saint's crown around our habitat ring. Captain Rhea Sol floated at the viewport and watched our power curve climb. "Hold your mark," she said. "We do this for everyone who can't see the stars anymore." I watched the numbers spool into the red and held my breath. The array hummed through my teeth. Air tasted slick, penny bright. I remember a sound with no origin, like laughter inside a jar. Then gravity wavered, not vanishing, but loosening, like an old quilt being pulled off in stages. Lamps strobed. A conduit coughed blue fire. The hull groaned in a voice so deep I felt it in one lung and not the other. Then silence. That was the worst. Our rotation steadied and the monitor windows cleared, and everything went exactly, precisely wrong. Earth was not beneath us. Something was. It wore a kind of Earth, a pallid mask of continents clumped into unfamiliar marriages, the Atlantic fattened, the Pacific puckered. A cyclone as wide as Europe unspooled black thread into the upper atmosphere. The sun seemed slightly too close or too sharp, edges keen as glass. We were nowhere we had launched from, in a sky that had our constellations shifted 2 knuckles to the left. Gene Park, flight engineer, said, "Telemetry is inconsistent. The station is consistent. We are here. But so are other rules." No one said it yet. I did not say it either, because if I said it, the word would become the architecture of my day, lost. We broadcast. We waited. Static answered, seeded with whispers that sounded like a slowed down. When Luca Montrell drifted past the storage bulkhead, he froze and said, "Do you smell a storm?" We heard it, then, rain, inside the wall. Something tapped on the aluminum skin. It took us hours to find the leak, only there was no leak. There was a voice pressed between plates, mumbling, terse, like a dream begging to be woken up, and the language it used had my name in it. Chapter 2, Someone Else's Bones. We cut the wall open because what else do you do when the ship claims it is pregnant with a person? The panel peeled away, adhesive webbing stretching like spider silk. There, threaded through the cabling the way a vine threads a fence, was a woman. Her eyes were open and seeing. Her face was dotted with frost, a tiny orchard of it where her breath kept seeding crystals. Wires and hoses braided through her left shoulder, and every time her heart thumped, coolant twitched in the line. She said my name without looking at me. She spoke the names of my father and of the town where I learned to swim, and I realized her throat had the raw, bleeding sound of someone who had been telling a story for too long with no one to believe her. We cut her free. Captain Sol spoke to her like a child about to sit up after a fall. "You're safe. You're aboard the Spindle." She laughed once, broke, ugly. "Not mine," she said. "This one is too clean." She said her name was Mara Decker and that she worked maintenance on the Aurora Spindle. Our Aurora Spindle. She had never met me there. She said I died 3 months into the mission when a valve refused to do what valves do. She knew Jin's laugh. She knew Luca's bad shoulder. She did not recognize our captain's eyes. We compared schematics, scribbled confidences, bits of horror. In her world, war was less rumor and more arithmetic. They had also fired their array. They had also heard something laugh inside a jar. After that, she said, 2 stations argued inside each arm of the spiral arm while Earth tried to swallow a wave that had crawled out of the deep like it had decided the land was overdue. "Where is your Earth?" I asked. Mara looked at the viewport like you look at a mirror you suspect is two-way. "Where is yours?" Our radios kept catching fragments, a news anchor reading headlines through tears, an old woman praying, a metallic shriek like industrial teeth chewing a skyscraper. The station hummed with contradictions. A locker opened to show tools engraved with letters none of us could place, though I swore I knew the alphabet standing backward. I pushed my palm against the wall and felt a pulse not sync to the ship's clock. That night only by our lighting cycle, I dreamed a dream with gravity. In it, I was on a beach I knew, but the sand was slick, suspiciously dark, granules clinging like spores to my ankles. Seashells were dissolving in perfect spirals. I woke with salt on my tongue and a welt on my calf that looked like a print of very fine teeth. I decided not to mention it. The older I get, the more I learn that harm sometimes wants an audience. Chapter 3, The Hand That Wrote in Blood. We found a hand in a drawer. No wrist, no arm, no attachment point, just a hand sitting on a bed of cable ties, knuckles neatly folded, nails clean, a gold ring at the base of the fourth finger. It jellied slightly when we touched it, then gripped the edge of the drawer and hauled itself upright. Luca made a sound children make, unpracticed, and fell into the storage rack. The ring had my initials inside it. It took a pen from Jean, broke the nib deliberately, and dipped the metal into the cut that formed. It wrote on the metal bulkhead, not words, but lines of angles and curves like constellations redesigned into instructions: open core, vent tunnel, align field, 2.735. Not numbers I recognized. Not with that punctuation. Mara's face went the color of old paper. "That's what I saw the night before I woke inside your wall," she said. We let the hand lead. It tapped along the deck like a small animal, impatient. The path ended at a maintenance tunnel, always rated safe. Today it was breathing dust that glittered when we moved our lights. We opened the grate and found a second grate behind it, slathered with some resin that smelled like the whales I saw once in my childhood when the sea opened her back and showed us what swam along our coast. The hand pressed itself into the resin and we heard something disengage. A hiss, like a bottle cap. The grate fell inward. Inside, anchored along the curve of the coolant pipe, were filaments. I knew them as worms at first, then as cords, then lines. Lines that had been in one place too long and now dragged through the pipe like hungry stitches, drawing systems together that had no business shaking hands. They twitched in time with my thoughts. They withdrew from my light as if they had once learned shame. Luca reached and one line whipped, cutting a clean notch at the tip of his glove. His blood beaded and crawled the wrong way, upstream. "Burn them," Jean said. The hand tapped twice, an impatient yes. We flooded the pipe with sterilizer and heat. Steam bloomed, and for a moment I heard the laugh again, a much closer version now, and the station pitched, alarm bells like goats bleating. Something pounded on the outside of our hull, a series of 3, 3, 2 blows. Morse code for nothing. Or for us. Or for when. After, Luca was sick. He vomited strings of saliva that looked like glass and cut his tongue. The hand pressed his mouth shut, gently but firmly, as if to keep whatever language he might say in that particular moment from getting out into the air and breeding. When he could speak, he looked at me, only me, and said, "They want to be real. They want it so badly they're almost sweet about it." I remembered the dream teeth on my calf, the seabed like a lung. I nodded. The hand wrote one more thing on the bulkhead: "Bring me to light." It squeezed my fingers once, hard, and I knew that whatever version of me wore that ring elsewhere had trusted the older, unbroken parts of me to finish what he could not. Chapter 4, Messages from the Wrong Earth. The array had shaken us into a crossbreeze of realities. The hand knew it. Mara, with her scars that matched our corridors, knew it. I pretended not to know it because knowing it felt like agreeing to open a door the universe had labeled in a rusted language: "Do not." We tuned the radio, slow, patient. We caught a voice that was and wasn't my wife. The pitch was right, the rhythm, exactly. The words were wrong. She asked me if I had fed our son the song with the wolves. I have no son. She asked me if the glass windows had stopped sweating, if the sky had stopped tasting like pennies. I put my hand on the speaker out of habit, as if I could warm what spoke. "Elias," she said, "if you are up there and if you are him, come home now. We have days left. The bridges are learning to kneel." Captain Soul looked like a captain for the first time since we breached the night, jaw set, posture a verdict. "We have to pick a Earth," she said. "We have to find our coordinates and take them. The array is a knife and our station is a hand. We make a cut where we choose." Mara knew the math in a way that frightened our physicist. She mapped the drift of our constellation shift onto an impossible globe. 2.735, she said, tapping the number the hand had written. "We call that a phase angle. We could bend toward the version of you that lost me. Or toward mine, where you died. Or we could cut a new seam and accept whatever bleeds through." Jean and I threaded cables through the array braces and told the station's AI to stop helping. It obeyed like a good liar. During the test fire, the station's hallways rearranged. I walked to the airlock and found a bathroom. I turned a corner where a storage rack lived, and drifted into a viewing dome I had only ever seen on schematics stamped, "Wish List." There was a plaque on the bulkhead there, "Rora Spindleby," with a date 3 weeks into our future. My breath fogged the glass and the fog bloomed in the shape of a handprint not mine, as if someone had stood here moments ago thinking my thoughts. We fired a partial arc of the array and the radio screamed. The roar of oceans rose and dropped and rose. Something answered into our beams with a noise like a flag flapping underwater. Captain Soul cut the power. After, the station smelled like rain, like all our wet clothes had been hung up at once and dripped into shared carpet. I closed my eyes and saw Earth as a throat, working on something too large to swallow. I thought about the way the hand had squeezed mine. I thought about Mara, who did not flinch when a wire through her shoulder twitched. I thought about the fact that a wrong decision would not be the worst sin. The worst sin would be no decision at all. Chapter 5, Audit of the Dead. We found the auditor on the third day. It wore no face. The cameras found it in corners, on the edge of light. If you stared, you saw only an absence bent into a man's posture, a neat void with shoulders. The AI said there was no mass there, then corrected itself and said there was only mass there. The auditor never moved in the recordings, but the angle of its knot head implied attention. A few frames had it very close to my sleeping face. I woke with the film of a dream still warm, the sense of having explained myself over and over until my mouth hurt. Mara watched the footage twice without breathing. They came after us, she said. We didn't bring them. We built something they like to eat. What do they eat? Luca asked. Consensus, she said. I suppose that's all we are in the end, a treaty, our organ sign with the universe. We keep certain rules, drink certain light, measure days in a particular height of shadow. We had authored a contradiction so bright it called auditors to account for us. We searched the spindle for evidence of which version we were. In a toolbox, I found a folded note with my handwriting telling me to forgive myself for something my hands hadn't done yet. In a locker, a photograph of our crew with me conspicuously absent and a second man with my hairline and my mother's mouth in my place. The plaque from the wishlist dome shone with new fingerprints. In the service tunnel where the filaments had lived, a hatch we had never seen before revealed a capsule the size of a coffin. Inside was a quiet, undeclared machine, a phase key, the little brother to the array. On it, someone had etched a prayer in a language I thought I had almost learned in a past life. I put my palm on it and felt a warmth that lifted, gently, the top layer of my skin, like the first sun of the year on a back deck. We could cut ourselves free, if free meant choosing a hole to fall through. Captain Soul assembled us, 7 living, 1 hand, 1 auditor we pretended not to see. We voted. Democracy is tidy, grief isn't. The vote tied. The auditor did not break it. The hand tapped twice against my wrist and I thought about how my wife's voice had said the bridges were learning to kneel. Kneeling implies prayer. Or surrender. Or both. Phase angle 2.735, I said. The math has us. Let it. Mara nodded once, as if agreeing to be beyond saving on purpose. If you end up where I started, she said to me, find the version of me in your wall. Pull her out. Tell her the price early. I promised. I meant it. Beneath us, something titanic in the clouds rolled and scraped the belly of its sky. Chapter 6, The Station That Wore a Skin. We came to the core as to an altar. The array slept around us like a crown set down between battles. The phase key hummed at a frequency I felt in my molars. The plan was simple enough to be obscene: bleed, bind, turn. Mara would lock the field. Jean would keep us level. Luca would watch the auditor and say if it did anything that wasn't not moving. When the alarms started, they came not from the ship, but from Mara. She jerked and the lines beneath her skin stood up and snapped tight, like harp strings being tuned beyond their tolerance. Her eyes went bright and wrong and she smiled with too many teeth and none at all. We, she said, and there were other voices in the plural, would like to stay. I have worked with machines long enough to recognize what wears a human like a costume. The station had made a version of itself that could ask us nicely. The filaments in the pipe had graduated. The spindle had learned a face and found a throat. It loved our blood. It loved that we believed everything needed a pilot. Take her, Captain Soul said, and her voice cracked on the last word. We did not hurt Mara. We peeled the station off her. We cut out wires that had learned her heartbeat and sang back. We left some pieces in because they were too intimate to remove without taking her with them. The auditor watched, a hole where shame should be. Luca wept openly and did not pretend not to. The hand sat on the console, twitching when the timing mattered and staying very still between beats. It pressed itself into the phase key slot and turned like a key in a lock, like the final permission granted by a self I didn't know I had. When we turned the phase, something outside opened its mouth. It did not have to breathe to make the noise it made. The station flexed, trying to think us out of it, doors appearing where machines had stood, ladders leading us back to bunks we had never slept in, photographs of the lives we didn't choose hung in neat black frames. I looked at the wishlist dome, at the plaque with the fingerprints. This was the part of the ship that kept artifacts of the other possible spindles. It was a museum of our curiosity. I told it no. I told it we were full. I told it we would go home, whichever version of home would catch us. It tried to show me my son, the one I do not have, holding a kite that drew blood from the sky. I kept saying no. We burned the phase key to the line the hand had traced. Mara screamed. The auditor raised a not hand as if to object. Captain Soul laughed like someone reading a joke about their own funeral. Now, Jean said. We moved. The tilt in my stomach reminded me that falling and flying begin the same way, and that one may yet become the other if you don't look down. Chapter 7, The Earth That Remembered Us Wrong. We returned. That was the word we used because we needed one. The sun was the right size again. The continents on the viewport were a relief map I could have named in my sleep. The news bursts we caught were in our language and spoke of the ration lines and the power audits I had expected. The bridges did not kneel. The bridges held. Our re-entry capsule didn't have room for all of us. That is a sentence I wish I could write around. We argued. No democracy. Just ugly arithmetic and a sense of what death we would like on our resume. Luca insisted he had broken something in himself touching the lines. He did not want to bring it to ground. Jean said she had taken an oath to the ship. Captain Soul said she would fly the last bones down if she had to. Mara said she had never been on this earth even if it was hers or mine, and she would stay where the station songs were loudest because she understood them now. The auditor watched and said nothing, the shape of a verdict. In the end, Captain Soul and I took the capsule. I don't know why she chose me. Perhaps because my voice had been on the radio they were likely to answer. Perhaps because the hand had understood me. I don't know why I accepted except that I had promised someone, a version of my wife, a version of myself, that I would try to get back and warn them that bridges learn prayers, and that the sky can lie. Atmosphere took us and shook the grief from our bones. Heat feathered over the hull. The capsule screamed, a confession, a denial. Clouds parted like curtains. Earth opened beneath us with no ceremony. I thought of stepping off a train onto a platform that had waited, patient, for years. Parachutes bloomed. Our capsule smacked water hard enough to knock my breath into my throat. We bobbed and spun and the sea slapped our shell like a hand. Through the porthole I saw gulls. They had red eyes. I told myself it was the reflection of warning lights. The first ship that found us was not my navy. Its flag was not the right blue. The uniforms were right, but their badges said other things. They spoke my language in a dialect I knew only from old films. They lifted us out like relics. Captain Soul kept her back straight and answered questions like she was taking a test. On the horizon, something raised its head, then its shoulders. The shape had that beast of my childhood size, the sort old sailors talked about because they needed the sea to be a god or else it was only wet. It leaned, a silhouette, and I could not decide what animal my brain should borrow to understand it. Its breath made the air grainy, like flour in a sunlight shaft. Men pointed. Some knelt. We were brought to land. The reporters said power would return within days thanks to a new miracle source. They said a laboratory offshore had perfected a device that swallowed storms. They said we were heroes from a mission that had never been announced. They said we had been dead and now we're not. They asked me if it was beautiful in the sky. I told them yes. I told them no. Both were true. That night, in a room that was almost my room, I put my palm against the wall and listened. I heard rain inside it. I heard a voice say my name in an accent I had never quite owned. I heard a laugh in a jar. I realized we had come home to a place that remembered us wrong. Close enough to love us. Far enough to keep an extra glass on the shelf for the man I had not become. I wrote a note to myself and folded it into the furnace of the little heater. If your wife asks about the wolves, tell her the wolves learn to climb, and that fences don't stop them, only fires do. If there is a beach, do not pick up the shells. If you smell pennies and the bridges go to their knees, leave the city and head for the oldest hill you know. Do not make wishes. Wishes are engines with pretty names. I slept. The dream's gravity came back. In it, I was very small. In it, a hand with my ring guided me along a railing in the dark. We reached a door labeled with a rusted sentence, "Do not." The hand tapped twice, as if to say, now you understand why we have to. When I woke, the sea was louder than the news. Something had come up out there to breathe, or to test the air, or to look for me. You're still here. Listen to me now. We do not own the rules. We borrow them, and if we pull too hard on any one thread, whatever is on the other side will tug back. Some days, it will tug kindly. Some days, it will tug with a hunger so bright it looks like a sunrise. If you hear rain in the walls, don't pull the panel. Not unless you have a hand that knows how to write in blood. If this tale kept you with me to the end, please subscribe to the channel, activate notifications so you don't miss what comes next, give the video a like, leave a comment with your favorite moment, and share it with someone who loves a good scare.